That's right. I kind of missed my mark at 11:30. It's 12 o'clock. But we're doing it. That's right. We're doing it live right here on Facebook. So we are not live on the radio. We're just live on Facebook because last Thursday I interviewed Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette and we had a mess up with live video. And that's how we put it on our Facebook page. So I said, I know. I'll just redo the show. Fortunately, I recorded most all of the interview with Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette, who is in her search for the governorship for the great state of South Carolina. So I guess I missed the first minute or so in my recording. But of course, we did have telephone issues. I had to use the workaround method. I did get it done. And so for that, I am very proud of myself. But still. Anyways, I wanted to redo this for you so that you would have this interview that afternoon. You may remember we interviewed South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson, and that way, if you want to compare the two interviews, I tried to ask a lot of the similar questions so that you would have a good comparison. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the interview I did with the Lieutenant Governor. I first asked her, of course, said that it was good to have her here with us here this morning, and she made comments about it was our first interview since the new year, so she wished everybody New Year. She then launched into talking about going to all 46 counties in the great state of South Carolina, which she considered a very big accomplishment, and I think it is. Talking to people from all different walks is a very good thing to do if you're going to be the governor. Then I asked her about, as you travel the state and consider your run for governor, what do you believe is the single biggest issue for South Carolina that they must get right during the next 4 years? And she proceeded to tell us that having a strategic plan so that you can get everybody on board with going in your direction. And so that's where we're going to pick up the interview with Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette. So let's see if I can pull up that. Yes. And here goes the interview with Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette that we actually did last Thursday. And we are going to be playing it now, so you'll have it for future reference. Let's take it away. This will be, Pamela Evette will be talking where I picked it up. Take it away.
But if you're in an urban area, you're saying, hey, listen, I don't want all the growth to continue to pile up in one section. And so when you start concentrating on where's our most prime fertile farmland and how do we protect that, and then, where around our state would be businesses that would complement South Carolina, the kind of businesses we want, and where would they be best suited? And then you give commerce a place to really focus on, and you give local chambers a place to say, wow, yeah, now we see the vision. Now this is the kind of industry, these are the kind of jobs we should attract to our area. And then you give SCDOT a roadmap of where they can target and focus infrastructure dollars, right? Because this is where the growth is going to go. And I always had a plan in my house when just running my household. I had a plan when I grew my business into a national company. I think that excites people to say that they're going to have a governor who's actually going to use common sense and think to how thoughtfully keep growing the state, putting things where they are. Instead of being afraid of growth, let's work with growth to make sure that it's happening on our terms and the way we want it and where it needs to go. and where companies will thrive. That gets everybody positive. Even the naysayers that say, oh, no, we don't want any more growth. When they believe that somebody has a thoughtful plan, they get excited once again about all the potential that South Carolina has.
Absolutely. I think those are good points. But another point, Pamela, is you brought up SCDOT. Okay, we've been dealing with that for years. But what about the growth with the grid? What about power? What about all this data centers that we're talking about bringing in here? How are we going to deal with that? Just last week when we were having power, when we had the snow, we were advised by Duke Power to cut back our power usage. And it made me think about California, rolling blackouts, this type of thing. Have we addressed that issue?
Yes, this is going to be a continuing problem as technology continues to evolve, right? And so you can't say, oh yes, we passed a great big beautiful energy bill, now we're done. You always have to keep your eye on these issues. And so the energy bill passing last session was a huge boost. VC Summer, our nuclear plant has now been resurrected. Brookfield was awarded that contract. I had them in my office a few weeks ago. They are really optimistic that we'll see nuclear energy coming out of that plant within 6 years. As soon as 6 years, could possibly be 7. But in the world of energy, that is pretty quick. We just had there was an order that was sitting in the South Carolina Supreme Court that just got signed off on to make sure that we could get a pipeline delivering natural gas to our Grand Strand. They were really struggling, had lost a lot of business opportunities there because of their need for more natural gas. We have all positive things. When you talk about like what is the next wave of technology, there's no doubt that it is coming with AI and other things like that. We have to make sure that our K through 12 students are prepared for the careers of the future. We have to make sure that our colleges and universities, and I'm proud to say, being at Lander, talking with the students there, talking with Lander's president. I mean, they are really focused on those careers of the future and AI and how that kind of technology will work to everybody's benefit. Now, what I will tell you is I'm never going to allow any corporation to come into South Carolina and put the burden of cost on taxpayers and ratepayers. That is not right. We have to make sure that we are looking at, if data centers are looking at South Carolina, then they need to be the right type of data centers. And I can tell you, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that the data center that resides in Spartanburg, it's fed by natural gas. So it is not impacting the grid at all. It's not using water to cool its facility. It's using fans, so it's not extracting too much water. These are the data centers of the future. This is the new technology, and I think that's what I mean when I say we have to make sure it's the right fit, right?
Right.
And if somebody can bring that updated technology to us, that's not going to adversely impact our citizens, then we have to look at it, because in Spartanburg, that data center is, and you know how big Spartanburg County is, that is the second largest revenue generator for that county.
Wow.
So
yeah,
we can't look at old data. We have to look at the future. We have to again go back to having a business person at the helm that knows what will work good for the people of South Carolina and won't overburden them.
correct. So as governor, casinos are becoming a big conversation here in South Carolina. If legislation legalizing casinos reached your desk as governor, what factors would determine whether you sign it or veto it?
I think a lot of it has to be the will of the people. You and I have talked about this a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people on both sides of this issue. I think it would need to be, there's so many bills, and I don't even, I don't see much movement in it, honestly, from my side. So I haven't really gotten all too um, into what the language is, what that will look like. Are we talking about, big, high dollar resorts that may have some of this in it? Are we talking about online? I keep hearing so many different things, but I haven't seen any movement. So, I always tell people, let's see what actually gets traction before we start getting too worked up about it, and let's see what that even looks like. But like I said, I have not heard much about it. I mean, I hear it out in the fringes, but I don't hear about it here at the State House, hardly at all.
So would you personally support or oppose casinos, though, Pam, or leave it entirely to the legislator and voters? If the legislator sent you a bill, would you oppose it, or would you sign it, or would you return it and say, if you can override it, so be it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would depend. I don't even know what a bill like that would look like, and I've always been very careful to say I don't really comment about bills until I see what it looks like. I think we always, as elected officials, have got to do the will of our people too. What are the people saying? If people don't want it, then it should never get out of the General Assembly.
Right?
And so it becomes one of those things, I think, when you talk about issues like this, the people of South Carolina have a voice, and their voice has to be heard.
Exactly, exactly. But that's why I just wondered where you would be on it. I mean, the governor doesn't actually get to make those choices, but she has that option when it comes across your desk from the legislature. And I know there's a lot of push. There's a lot of push on hemp products right now. Is that going to make it through, or is it not? So I think those are questions that a lot of people were asking me to ask you about where you stood on this issue.
Well, and I think, hemp, the hemp products, those always have such different tentacles, right? Because like hemp is used, like I had a big packaging company that uses hemp for sustainability in packaging.
Correct.
And they were really concerned. And so, I think sometimes, Anne, when people hear the word hemp, they think marijuana. But sometimes hemp has a whole nother meaning. Like people are using this, again, in packaging and clothing, and you know what I mean? So it's like being grown for a whole different purpose,
Oh, sure.
not for kind of a drug purpose. So you want to make sure that you're not going to hurt one while you're trying to save young people on the other side. And I think when it comes to, the marijuana side of that, I have always stood with the governor. I think this is something that would definitely put a huge burden on our law enforcement.
Sure.
We have so many negative things that our children are exposed to all the time. That is something that I don't want them exposed to. I'm a mom first and foremost. So, I mean, my heart always breaks for people. My father died of cancer. He had lung cancer. Never smoked a day in his life. It was a secondary cancer. But I saw what he went through, Ann. And
Sure.
as a daughter, I would have wanted him to have whatever he could to be out of pain. So I sympathize with like the senator when he talks about medical. But I think what I hear from my colleagues who have tried to go that route, it doesn't ever work. It ends up opening up to too many people. It ends up kind of like once you let that horse out of the barn, it is out there. I'm always willing to listen to people, but my heart on that issue tells me when I hear from like Deotis that we have so many people that get addicted to marijuana, that becomes a gateway drug, that we have people in treatment for that addiction,
Sure.
that it's a depressant. Those things scare me because there's actual data behind the negative
Absolutely.
implications
Yeah.
of it. But so, I think if you're talking about hemp for making packages for people because it's a sustainable product and it decomposes, I think,
Well,
okay, that might be a really good use. But if you're talking about it in the production of high levels of THC and, the drug effect of it, then no, that's something that, the governor and I have always stood, along with law enforcement with.
Right. Well, South Carolina has seen, we were just talking about Spartanburg. South Carolina has seen such a growing concern about measles and other preventable, but South Carolina is leading the pack, I understand, particularly out of Spartanburg. As governor, how do you balance parental choice with the state's responsibility to protect public health, especially in our schools?
Well, and this becomes a slippery slope like we talked about in COVID, right? I was asked that question by the Post and Courier, and I do stand with parents' rights. Parents have a right to make informed decisions. And I was asked in a follow-up question the next day, what is the state's obligation? And what I turned around and said, what is the obligation of our pharmaceutical companies? If parents are nervous about the MMR vaccine, then why are pharmaceutical companies? It's behooving pharmaceutical companies to come forward with their data, with their research, to change parents' minds. But never, ever should the state tell parents that they know better for their kids. And I think this becomes a part of why we have this parental rights bill, because for so long we were seeing these things chipped away. And, there are some people that claim a religious exemption on some of these vaccines. I mean, that's written in the Constitution, Anne. So at some point, I think we are always on safe ground when we don't want to tear up what's written in our Constitution. And I did my research as a mom. My children, were vaccinated. Now, my youngest, when it came to MMR, because there was so much more information when Jackson came along, I asked his pediatrician to just break the shots up, and it cost me more. But that's what my research showed me was the right thing to do. So instead of getting one shot with all those viruses in it, he got them individually, and we spaced them out. And that made me feel better as a parent. There is middle ground. That was my decision. That was the decision David and I made together. And I think parents always know what's best for their children, and we cannot get in the way of that.
Yeah. Well, that is a question. How do you balance when we didn't even have measles, and we have had those vaccines around for measles and mumps and everything forever and ever. Mm-hmm. So I just wondered, how do we balance that? And if we lose that immunity, what is that going to mean?
I know. And you know what? That's why I think this is the job of now the pharma world. They need to come up and they need to present, parents and young people finding their data out. They're doing a lot more research, I think, than was done years ago. And I think it behooves pharmaceutical companies. And I spoke at Bio at the Bluff, and there were big pharmaceutical companies there. And everybody knows I'm a Trump supporter, and the moderator said, you have a lot of big pharma companies in this room. They're not feeling, some of them don't feel that, President Trump is kind of on their side, and what would you say to that? And I'd say, then I don't think you're looking at the right way. The president and his administration wants Americans to live long and be healthy, and that should be the same perspective that pharma has. And that is a great place to start. And I believe when these kind of things come up and people have doubt, then it opens the stage for them to show their research, convince parents it's safe, bring parents back to the table. But sitting silent only allows the naysayers to grab hold and create the narrative. And so I think it's not so much government, but maybe government should be pushing pharmaceutical companies to make a better argument to parents on why these things are safe.
Okay, well, I think that's a good position to be in, but you do have to balance these two things. I mean, yeah. I mean, I had measles and mumps and all those things, and I've talked to people that have had very bad cases and people that haven't. But I do think it is concerning over there in Spartanburg how fast that has spread over there.
Well, and you know what? I always worry about the slippery slope, Ann. Once we allow government to start telling parents, because basically when you say I'm not going to I don't think you're smart enough to make these decisions, then what other decisions is government going to try to take away? I think once you go down this slope, and it can become a very slippery slope very fast, and you you never know who's going to be in power when everything starts to change, right? And I will never waver on the fact that nobody and no government loves my children more than I do, and will make better decisions for them than I would make. And so that's kind of like the North Star that guides me is, parents, we should never infringe on their rights. We definitely have to support them every way we can. And again, that's why you're seeing this parental choice bill going through. Again, some people wonder why. It should be common sense, but as we keep saying, common sense is not so common anymore. And so we have to kind of put these things into law.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to ask you something. You made a comment the other day following the tragic Florence County murder case. You posted on social media criticizing Attorney General Alan Wilson, saying he was asleep at the wheel and more focused on political ambitions than his job. What specifically led you to make that public accusation?
Well, because, we keep seeing this time and time again, where, that office continues to push things down into our local counties who are already over backlogged with cases. We saw that with the horrible murders, jumping in to say the death penalty should be for one girl's heinous murder, but not making any comment about a murder that happened in 5 Points, where a girl got, brutally stabbed in an Uber. I mean, so much so that we made a law into these Uber drivers, Lyft drivers having to identify themselves before you get in a car. You cannot pick and choose. Justice has got to be served evenly across the board. And when we see that we're only making comments on things during this race, I think that needs to be brought out. Like, what about all these other cases? What about all these other things? Like, don't just stand up for one thing when a girl who's been brutally murdered in Colombia, when her father gets on TV, and then everybody else, they don't get a comment or anything. As a mom, I want to make sure that people who are sitting in office are delivering, like I said, justice evenly across the board. And that's why I talk about judicial reform and how people need to have a feeling of confidence that our legal system is always blind, that everybody gets the same fair shake when they step in front of a judge. And that's why I've said, perception is reality in our world. And if people feel that our judges aren't being elected properly, then they start to feel that justice isn't being delivered properly. That's why the governor and I have been saying forever that the governor should appoint and the General Assembly should confirm.
Correct. But just to be clear for our listeners, you're criticizing policy decisions, prosecutorial priorities, or something else in the Attorney General's role?
Well, I think the fact that we're singling out cases that we want to comment on, and I think that's when it starts to look like, what are you doing? Why are we picking and choosing what we want to do? There's been another case that has come up where, the Attorney General's office said they had conflict, and they sent this gentleman down to the county level. I mean, these counties are already. I mean, I have pulled numbers. My team has pulled numbers. We have counties that are 5,000 and 6,000 case backloaded. And when you take your office and you say, I'm gonna step away from this case, we're conflicted out, I can't imagine that every attorney in the AG's office is conflicted out of a case, and now we're going to push it down to a county that's already backlogged thousands of cases. And what happens? how long does that case now take to come up? Is that person out on the street? Those kind of things concern me as a South Carolinian, as a mom.
Sure. So, what do you see as governor? How would you see as part of the agencies and everything? How would you see that the Attorney General's office should be handling it?
Well, let me just kind of say this. I think the Attorney General's office should be aggressive. They should, it should be predictable, right? If you do this, this is what's going to happen. Predictability and consequences leads for a safer state and a safer country. We saw during the Biden administration when there were no consequences, just how off the rail everything has gotten. And so, that is an elected position. The people of South Carolina, it is now going to be an open seat. There's, lots of candidates that have thrown their hat in the ring on that. And I think you need to look for somebody that is rooted in law and order, that is committed to really protecting the people of South Carolina. And, it shouldn't be the governor's job to go and tell the Attorney General's office what to do. It should be electing the right person to do the job. It's like I've said, when you're looking at who you want to elect for a governor, make sure they have the resume to do the job. Make sure that they know how to handle that job, and keep 10 plates in the air at all times, because all those things are connected together. When one falls, they'll all start to fall. That's what we have to do for that position too. And with the right person in, the governor should work with that office and not have to kind of write letters. The governor in the past, and I'm going to have to end it here, but, the governor in the past has had to openly write a letter about some egregious things that happened out of that office. So I think, when it all works well and everybody is doing their job, we should all work in unison to keep the people of South Carolina safe.
Absolutely. Well, do you have time for just one quick question? Do you think that the mayor form of government, this is a question that just came in, is it antiquated? We have mayoral, we have the other type. What do you think about the government, our governments in our cities? Should the mayor government, is it too antiquated, or should the General Assembly look into that issue?
I'm not all about reinventing the wheel. I think the government that touches you the most has the most impact on your life.
Sure.
So what I've tried to do, and what I've told people in this governor's race and every other race, is do your homework. Make sure the people you put in these offices have the abilities, the skill set to do the job you're electing them for. I realize elections part and parcel can be a personality, a personality prize, but you have to have skills too, because you're asking for people to take your tax dollars, your hard-earned dollars, and put them to work to do the best things. And you're talking millions and billions of dollars. And so just, I don't think it's about reinventing the wheel. It's making sure you have the right people in the right spots. And I think local government should, we should be looking, like I'm looking at the state level, to use technology to make government better, to make it so things don't fall through cracks, to work efficiently like we do in our businesses every single day. You never go, well, everything's running good, I'm not going to worry about anything. You always strive for better. And I think, our cities and our localities probably need to do the same thing that I would like to see done here at the state level. Let's automate. Let's get efficient. Let's make sure that we're not overspending. Let's make sure that we're concentrating our resources on things that matter. We want to make sure the return on investment is big.
Absolutely. Well, as you close out here, why should South Carolinians trust you to lead the state through the next decade? Because it's going to be a doozy. Why should they, Pam?
Well, I tell people all the time, just look at my resume. I have the resume to do this job. From scratch, I built a successful company that operated in 49 states. And I've sat at the right hand of the governor now. This is my 8th year. I've had a great mentor. I can hit the ground running on day one. I know what we need to do to continue to grow this state and to grow it responsibly. And, just lay our resumes down and see who you think has the qualifications to do this job. And I think that answer will be very clear. It'll be Pamela Evette, and I hope that all of your listeners will show up at the voting booths on June 9th and vote for me, because I am dedicated to South Carolina. I'm dedicated to be the governor of all of South Carolina, not just for a few, for the entire state. That's why I think it's so important to get everywhere and hear what people are saying. And if you want to know more about me and what I'm doing, Ann, tell all your listeners to go to PamelaEvette.com. There's a newsletter. My team sends it out every week of where I've been, what I've seen, and what people are saying. And it lists where I'm going to be. And I would love for anybody who wants to meet me to personally come out if I'm somewhere in your area, so I can shake your hand and tell you a little bit about myself.
Absolutely. Well, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette on the quest for governor for the great state of South Carolina. Carry on.
Thank you so much, Ann. You take care, and I'll talk to you next month.
All right. It's great to talk to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette right here on the line with us. We had kind of a... Here we go. Okay, we had to do a workaround here this morning. I don't know why one of my systems wasn't working here this morning. But anyways, we are right here at WCRS Radio. So what'd you think of how Pamela answered questions here this morning? That's always trying to get the info for you right here on WCRS Radio. Had some good questions come in this morning, and I think we covered a lot of ground here today. All right. Well, that was my interview last Thursday right here on the morning show. Wanted to, as I said, in case you didn't know, we did have kind of a snafu with Facebook. So I said, let's just rerun the interview so we could make sure it would be on Facebook, and it'll go on our website in the next day. Maybe tomorrow we can get it up on Facebook for you. I mean, on the website, WCRS 1450am.net. That's all I got to say. It's a great day out there. It's, what is it? It's Monday, day after Super Bowl. And you now will have both interviews to compare the answers of South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson. And now you have the Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette. The choice is yours, South Carolina. Make sure that you know all you can about all the candidates running, and we will continue to bring you all the information you can stand right here on WCRS. Hey, tomorrow afternoon, Stephanie Turner's going to be with us on Meet Me at the Diner, and then Brandon and Templeton had to change, so we are moving that one to Wednesday for the Rumble at WCRS on the food fight. Just wanted you to know. Thanks for tuning in. That's going to do it for me right here, right now on Facebook Live with you, me, and that was Pamela Evette. Bye-bye, everybody.